Layla Luna is determined to create a world where anyone with autism and neurodiversity is treated with compassion and with equality. I talk one-on-one with Layla about her non-profit organization, Just Be, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Layla Luna, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Obviously, you are the founder and CEO of Just Be, which is a non-profit organization determined to create a world where anyone with autism and neurodiversity is treated equally and compassionately. Your story obviously started with your son Rio, who over the years have dealt with autism. In fact, you continue to find yourself in difficult situations when people did not know how to respond to Rio, who was actually diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And just recently, according to the Post and Courier, your efforts to help make South Carolina the first ever state to recognize license plates identifying individuals on that spectrum has come full circle, according to the paper, as the state Senate has formally reviewed and voted Rio's bill into law. Tell me, where are you emotionally?
Well, Rio's bill is probably one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life, besides having my babies. But honestly, it was days before Mother's Day, so I felt like it was such a wonderful win, and it was a moment. I'm still kind of in shock that I passed a bill, and I know that bills take so long, and it passed in the House unanimously, it passed in the Senate unanimously. We started this with House Representative Kathy Lanning, Councilmember Carl Ritchie, explaining this, bringing on House Representative Mark Smith, but collaborating all together. But honestly, House Representative Kathy Lanning, she championed this. She went the distance, and she was not going to give up. She was like, we're going to pass this. We're going to make this bill happen before the session ends. And we started this in around December. Right. So it's a very short turnaround to pass a bill to be law. And on top of it, no other state in our nation has ever done anything like this. This is the first one. There are other states that have on license plates like autism awareness, and you're donating to a different nonprofit like breast cancer awareness, but nothing strictly for law enforcement. This license plate is through the DMV, and if you have a child or an adult that's autistic or neurodivergent that has a diagnosis, you can get the plate. And then that plate being on your car will register to law enforcement when pulled over. There are going to be some other measures added to the bill. Right now, first, we just got it passed. Next step is mandatory training for law enforcement, fire, first responders, all the above, mandatory yearly training. Plus, we want to create a database to make sure that we could register our kids. So when they do pull you over, whether it's you're being pulled over or you break down, it doesn't matter. The police officers could scan the plate. They know immediately, oh, there's Layla Luna. She has a nonverbal son, 15 years old, who could potentially be in the car. Let's turn off those sirens. Let's turn off the lights. Let's walk up to the car calmly. And we know what we're walking into. Ultimately, we want to protect law enforcement. They have no idea what they're going to walk into. And having this kind of information completely de-escalates anything that could potentially escalate. So that's the big win. That's one of the greatest wins, is knowing, knowledge is power and time saves lives. And we want to save lives. We don't want something to happen to any individual, because a person with autism or neurodiversity under a sensory overload situation, they are going to reach into their pockets. They're going to lose language. They might try to touch you. Most likely they're going to run. They won't answer commands. I mean, if you're a police officer and a 6'3", 250-pound man is coming at you, pupils dilated because they're on medicine. My son is on meds because he has autism. So this could send so many mixed messages. And, this is in a matter of seconds for an officer to decide and what is the situation. So we're here to just help and bring that kind of confidence and understanding, but ultimately just knowledge and safety.
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel amazing to answer your question.
Absolutely.
I can't believe I pulled this off.
Yes. And people love you for that amazingly. Yes, ma'am. So let me ask you this. Sister's law. Yes.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but we were calling it the little bee that could.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. But let me go further because you mentioned something very unique. So when people sign up for this particular license plate, particularly autism families, will they be able to
Mhm.
donate financially to your nonprofit organization?
I don't know that. I should know that, but I don't know that yet. I mean, I'm sure there will be some type of proceeds because I think that's how it works. But because it's going through DMV and it
Right.
is a state plate, I'm not sure yet.
Mm,
But what I do know is it's for me, it's brand recognition.
yes.
The fact that people will see the bumblebee, it's
Yes.
not just for autism, it's
Right.
for an individual who's high functioning, neurodivergent.
Mm,
There's never really been something that's incorporating both of them. And
mm,
anyone who's neurodivergent under sensory overload will have the same reaction as someone with autism. They will have full anxiety, they'll lose language, the stress level. I mean, getting pulled over or being in a car accident or being anything
right.
with even law enforcement approaching you
Mm,
can be scary, can be intimidating, can be stressful. So this is just another tool. And taking it a step further,
yes.
training,
Oh, yes.
training, training. My son being nonverbal, if he were to be lost, I mean, for law enforcement to be able to have a database to know, but the big win will be when that plate becomes also the same as handicap. That is what all the parents want
Yes.
because you can be pregnant and park close, you can be a veteran and get to park close, you can be
Mm,
handicapped and park close, but I have to drag my son
mm,
across the whole parking lot with all his sensory issues, and by the time we usually get to our location that we want to go to, it's pretty much over. We have to go home. So
mm,
being able to park close and being accessible and easy access to any place that we want to go to make
yes.
our lives so much easier to be have that capability of being in the same as a handicap license plate would be the biggest win. I believe what goes along with that is you would be able to get into parks and
Oh,
museums for
yes.
free too.
So,
So
with those parks and museums, Layla, how many of those particular organizations do you want to help try to get training for their employees for situations such as those that you just mentioned?
every everybody, I want to train everyone. I mean, we have the training for businesses
Right.
to get on the Just Be app, which is now really ready to roll out. We're going to roll it out all summer.
Yes.
I'm doing a training next week. I just partnered with Boone Hall. I'm
Right.
going to be meeting with Patriots Point,
Sure.
Explore Charleston,
Right.
just really getting this out there so that this is great for tourism. It's
Sure.
great for families. It's great for anyone who wants to visit beautiful Charleston or just anyone who wants to be in that profession. It's a win.
Mm,
Community helping community, but ultimately with these numbers, I have to tell you a story. We did the Strawberry Festival and
right.
we brought the Beehive, which is our sensory mobile station that Mount Pleasant got for us, making Mount Pleasant the first autism friendly town. We purchased a 24-foot mobile trailer. It was a ProPax. It was from like during COVID times.
Mm,
So we flipped it in the inside. So it's a sensory mobile station and you can go in and they have fidgets, waterfall, just a place where if you're feeling overstimulated, you can
mm,
go in and just kind of reset and calm. So we did the Strawberry Festival. We were there at Boone Hall for 2 weekends
mm.
in a row, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We had about 400 families in that beehive a day. And all the families, whether they were moms that were just crying because
Mm.
we understood, and I would just say, you're not alone. For the kids to finally be able to enjoy. But the big takeaway from that whole event, which Boone Hall is amazing, all staff has been certified and trained. They had to skip the line so that our families didn't have to wait in line. Every staff was wearing the Just Beast button, our little bumblebees pin, and we had sensory headphones. We had everything. But what they loved, and they told staff, the takeaway was, if the beehive wasn't there, then we would have left hours ago.
Mm.
The beehive let families and their children, once they got overstimulated, they went in, they spent 15, 20 minutes, reset, relaxed, realigned, and then they went back out and played, which meant greater business. They spent more money, they went on the rides, they
Right.
watched the magic show, and they
Oh, yeah.
drank and they ate. Where normally they would have paid 20, 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour max and left. And this
Mm,
way, because we're creating this new normal
mm.
and an opportunity for these families to reset, they got to have the same quality of life. They got to actually stay at the Strawberry Festival all day and enjoy and have a family outing. And that's the win.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to change the child to
Right.
fit the environment. We're trying to change the environment to fit the child. It's an easy fix. And again, training, explaining, learning, developing, understanding, but to just be human and kind is the real avenue and the roadmap for Just Be.
Absolutely, and we love North Mount Pleasant, by the way. But let me ask you
Oh yeah.
this. Yes, indeed. I get to
Oh
work out
yes,
there a
we do.
lot.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
the
great.
best.
Yeah, great area. Absolutely. Now that Just Be is obviously on the rise, and you have the law passed now, how many more of those mobile
Mhm.
sensory stations do you want to have in the future?
Oh, I believe that every city should follow in Mount Pleasant's footsteps, and every city should have their own beehive.
Mm,
It's imperative. I mean, it's proof it works. We love it.
yes.
You know, we're going to bring it. We're going to start bringing the beehive in November with the voting. We're
Okay.
working with South Carolina voting so that the 85% of adults are on the spectrum and have
Mm,
autism. Their voice matters. They can vote, and usually they probably might not be voting because of lines and stress and not feeling part of that process. So we're going to make sure that we have the beehive out during polls with sensory bags or understanding for everyone that's working at the polling booths to understand autism and some of their sensitivities. We want all the cities to have this for their families whenever they're doing events. We were at Blessing of the Fleet, and we're going
yes.
to be we're partnering now with Hanahan. The city of Hanahan's going to certify. Same with Isle of Palms, so that
Yes.
we want to be present. Whenever there's a great event, we want to make sure that families know that they don't have to sit on the sidelines anymore,
Mm,
that they don't have to watch everyone have this beautiful life, that they can come and they're represented, that Just Be will be there. They're not alone. I am their voice, and that we can celebrate and we can coexist. But what I do realize, and the one thing I didn't really realize, now I realize, is that whether you're diagnosed or not, after the Strawberry Festival with all those families coming in and Blessing of the Fleet, I realized this is the new normal. These kids are wired different. Whether it's just so much cell phone or
oh,
that's the
yes.
food or it's electric modified fields, I don't know what it's causing,
Mm.
but these kids need to have this reset and some calmness when they're at these kind of larger events.
This might be an irrelevant question, Ms. Layla, but when did that culture shift happen with all of this that you just mentioned?
When Rio was diagnosed, it was 2010,
Mm,
and it was Rain Man. Nobody knew anything about autism.
right.
And I was the only mom. And I would go out and I'd be like, my son's autistic. And they're like,
Mm,
oh, he's an artist. I'm like, well, no, not really, but okay. Or people would say, oh, is he Rain Man? That was it. And
mm,
honestly, I feel like in the last 5 years, especially they're saying all these kids are coming out of COVID, pro COVID, post COVID,
right.
that there's been a huge shift on these kids. They're
Mm,
so sensitive. I think COVID had a lot to do with it. So really from 2019
mm.
to now, I really saw a huge shift. Whether they have ADHD, apraxia, Asperger's, dyslexia, Tourette's, Down syndrome, Asperger's, autism,
Right.
you know, one out of every four individuals has sensory processing disorder. One
Mm,
out of every four.
mm,
There's something, our kids are wired differently.
mm.
It is what it is. This is the new normal. The statistics, I mean, autism is going to surpass the cost of diabetes by next year, by 2025, starting at $500 billion.
So
Massive.
it is absolutely. It's from 2010 to from 2019 to right now. Obviously, what are the
Mm.
trends that you and your team are currently looking at?
I think that one of the biggest trends is how many nonverbals. When my son was nonverbal, when he was born, and after the diagnosis, nonverbal was very rare. Now we're
Mm,
looking at so many kids, and we're also going to start working with Exceptional Family Member Program from the military. We're
sure.
going to start working with the military, and the military is starting to show really high numbers of autism and ADHD. So we're going to start training some of the upper level leaders in the military. They're having this issue too. You have one parent deployed, one parent home. They move around every couple of years. That's why the app is so imperative to connect them. We, besides having a diagnosis,
Mm,
we need to connect. The biggest the biggest thing that I've seen is how the families feel so isolated and shunned upon. And I feel that the biggest shift for Jeff Spee is to integrate our families, to get these kids so that there's no more stigma. The more we're out in public, the more these children are viewed as just themselves, to just be themselves, not autistic, no labels, no discrimination. Hiring individuals in job force, so you see them when you're out and you're in businesses, you'll see these faces. We need to start to blend, and we need to start to incorporate and kind of weave our ways into the fabric of our communities, and that's how we really truly will win, and we'll have better quality of life, but ultimately we'll be able to kind of get rid of that. I said it before, the stigma, and I think that's the biggest trend I'm seeing, is that these families don't want to sit on the sideline. They want to be heard.
What are those other stigmas that you see that would be surprising to the average viewer?
Stigmas, well, mainly it comes in the job force. You know, it's interesting. Microsoft started in 2015 the autism hiring program, and they interviewed some individuals. I mean, these individuals went on like 300 to 400 job interviews. They couldn't even get hired at Starbucks because they didn't make eye contact. Some of them nonverbal, some of them, you know, very nervous, or didn't have the same, like, Asperger's, some of the speech patterns are, you know, very staccato and just robotic at times. Not all, but some can be very nervous. And then it turns out once Microsoft decided to be more innovative in their hiring process, they hired individuals, they started to put them in the workforce, and now these individuals are coding for Microsoft. Brilliant minds. So I think one of the biggest things we have to do to break that stigma is to not be judgmental, to not judge.
Right.
Be open-minded. Think outside the box.
Sure, absolutely. And how innovative can most of these companies be right now?
Easy. It's such an easy fix. You know, you can hire someone on the spectrum that find out what they excel in. Find out whether, you know, they are great in math or technology. They all have unique qualities, but also be open to the fact that, you know, what is purpose? What is success? You know, my son might work in your ice cream store, and he might only be able to open and close the door. But you know what? For him, it's like working at a Fortune 500 company. So we need to redefine what success is and what purpose is and what we want to view ourselves. You know, what side of the street do we want to be on? What kind of community do we want to have? Do we want to have a community where we see people that might not look like us, but that is okay because now we're incorporating them?
How does this new law redefine the purpose and success for most people with autism?
I'm sorry, my phone cut out. Can you repeat that one? I'm sorry.
No worries.
My apologies.
No worries at all. With Reel's law now being passed, how does that redefine the purpose and success for the average autism person?
It's a huge win for our community to make sure that when they're driving and they're out on the road, that they're safe. They don't have to second guess. They don't have to have fear. And for every parent that says goodbye, I love you, I'll see you later, and just be like, you know, I've talked to so many parents and they're terrified every time their son or daughter gets in the car, because whether they are high functioning enough to drive, you never know. Just like the same that any other parent. But the problem is with autism or neurodiversity, once a sensory overload kicks in, once the fear and the anxiety kicks in, they completely shut down. And that's where terrible things have happened. We know the statistics. We know that we've seen it on the news. But we also know not everything is caught on body cam. We know that individuals that are with autism or neurodiversity have lost their lives, have been injured, and the situation has been misread. It's happened too many times for us not to make a difference. So I think what signals to the families is that we matter and that we are protected, and that our state and our governor and our House representatives and our senators and our mayors and our, you know, our residents they care about our safety.
Yeah. It's locally, how many people have actually died because of being, obviously an autism person, and how many people have actually been injured due to some situations?
So many. There's so many. There was, the interesting thing when I pitched this
Oh, yes.
For House Representative Kathy Landing and Mark Smith, I put
Sure.
together a whole big, one pager.
Right.
And on the one pager, there was a clip from Rain Man.
Mm.
And they could click on it and they could watch it. There was a scene in Rain Man, the movie, which you're too young to ever remember, but it was a very successful movie. So Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, Dustin Hoffman, I think, he won an Oscar for it. Anyways, there was a scene that you could click in the scene, they pull up and they're on the freeway and there's a car accident and there's police, there's sirens, there's lights, and Rain Man has exactly what happened to Rio, a sensory overload meltdown, and he gets out of the car and Tom Cruise's character is chasing after him and he's just like, he walks off the freeway. He makes him walk. He will not get back in the car. He literally walks off. And that movie was done in 1988. Mm. And we're still here and no one thought about anything. There's no plan in place since 1988 or 2024. I mean, I know I watched on television the other day, there was another killing of a 15-year-old boy in California. There was a terrible accident just recently in Chicago where they tased a boy. They had the wrong person. He was autistic, nonverbal, broke his hip. The footage is so heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. So it's been happening. It's always going to happen. But now with this plate, we're hoping that it will stop happening.
And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But with your new app, obviously, how many people could actually apply for the license plate through that?
Not yet. I don't think they'll be able to do that because I think it just strictly has to go through DMV. But and the plates probably won't be produced and made until about December or January. Representative Landing was saying that it takes about 6 months. Wow. But since in that time, we're also going to amend to the bill and add to the bill the mandatory training, the handicap, and keep building off of it. But the biggest win was that this bill got heard and passed before the session ended, and that was the dream.
Yeah. And I know
couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And I know you're very, very happy about that. Now, obviously, as you just mentioned to me, it's going to take at least 6 months for the place to actually be created. But do you know how many families so far locally have actually requested to get a plate?
When we did Strawberry Festival, we had hundreds of families just say, when can we get it? They keep texting me.
Yes.
It's going to be a very, very successful. And not only will it be successful, I am in the very beginning process to, wondering if it's possible to take this federal, that other states should be able to have this. So we're going to start in South Carolina and we're going to roll it out and see how successful it is. But, ultimately, I believe that this should go nationwide.
And do you? And I want to get back to you about that as well. But when it comes to autism and obviously law enforcement, what should be their approach now that this law has been obviously passed into law? What exactly should they do next?
Well, they're going to get mandatory training. Right. I believe, like I was talking to the captain of, actually, it was the chief of police in Hanahan yesterday with Mayor Rainwater.
Sure.
And we were talking about that not only, yes, they're going to do the training. Yes, all the officers need to be trained. This is something that they really want to do a deep dive into. But moving forward, they want to make sure that they have sensory bags, at least one sensory bag in each car. Yeah. There should be a sensory bag on every fire truck. There should be a sensory bag in any first responder or EMS. They should have these sensory bags where they have the headphones, they have fidgets, they have poppets, they have communication cards that if in case they're nonverbal, they can say yes, no, me, help, lost, water, bathroom, and also an identifying card saying that it says, VIPB,
Right.
so that they can just wear that and know that they can be recognized. But because by that time, the Just Be logo will be very well known icon. So if a child is just wearing the B logo, you'll know that he's on the spectrum, and we don't need to get too much into the details of asking, like, are you
Right.
autistic? Or
Right.
that way they can have some privacy when out with their family, but to also signal to the community. We also are talking about putting some type of database together so
Right.
we could register in case there's a fire. Please pull
Sure.
up my address. Fire pulls up the address. They'll know, oh, there's a nonverbal on the second floor. So this is it's just the beginning,
Right.
but but we have a lot of plan in place. And the main thing is that we get some of these things. The chief of police was saying yesterday that the police officers in their car, they have teddy bears.
Right.
I guess more for trafficking or
Sure.
stuff like that, or to sue the child if lost.
Sure.
But for autism, I said that's not going to work. A puppet, a spinner, yes, but a teddy bear might not so much. So that's why we need to kind of bring that on to all these vehicles.
And obviously, until the plate gets done, how soon do you think the database will be launched?
We're still creating it. I believe they'll all be ready. Most likely, this looks like a 2025 rollout.
Okay.
But in the meantime, it is the bill's done.
Right.
They don't go the House and Senate doesn't go back into session till January. So I think everyone's off for the summer,
Yes.
but just in time for us to build more brand recognition, being able to do interviews like with you. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Getting the word out.
Yeah.
I am just like a mom on a mission.
Yes.
But my goal is to, be a representative in your community, help families, help individuals, let them know that this is just the beginning, that Just Be is here to make a better world, a black and yellow world where everyone can coexist. They can have the greatest quality of life. They can have love. They can have jobs. They can have dreams. They can have equality. This is the world I see. And, I am pretty tunnel vision, and I don't want to look left or right. I want to just stay straight on my vision and make my vision a reality, because this is all dedicated to my son and the millions of families just like myself.
And when you do take it federal, obviously, Ms. Layla, what are some of the things that you couldn't do on the state level that you want to do on the federal level with this particular license plates?
I see it like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the mom who did Amber Alert. I see it rolling out from state to state, because the symbol for autism, a lot of families don't really like the puzzle piece. They don't identify with the puzzle piece. It has mixed messages. Some families will say that, my son isn't missing a piece to his puzzle. He's perfectly designed the way God wanted him. There's a lot of stigma with some types of labels and terms. Just Be is to, just be the change, to just be kind, just be nice, just be human, to just be. So, and also incorporating neurodiversity, which is new. When we started the bill, they were just going to do autism, and said, no, you have to add neurodiversity or else you're going to amend it in a couple of years, because being neurodivergent or being a neurodiverse individual is really important to recognize. We're learning a lot about it. It's growing. It's not just only incorporating Down syndrome. It is part of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which a lot of people don't know that. So we really want to tap into the neurological brain differences that individuals go through, whether it is even PTSD. PTSD is the same as sensory overload. It's the same thing. So our veterans that will feel overstimulated, this helps them. So we need to kind of think, this is our community. These are our neighbors. This is my son, or this is my daughter. This is a friend of mine, a coworker. We can't ignore it. We have to be in the conversation. So the license plate going federal would just, honestly, save lives. It's pretty simple.
And what are those? Yes, ma'am. And what are the other trends that you and your team are actually looking at when it comes to neurodiversity?
I mean, we're doing training. Dr. Cullinane is here. She's going to be training for like we're going to do a training with the police in Hanahan. We're talking now to North Charleston.
Sure.
We're working with the city of Conway.
Oh yes.
I mean, every Greer, you name it, everybody wants it. But and Isle of Palms,
Sure.
Mount Pleasant, of
Sure.
course, Charleston.
Right.
So we are all incorporating. I talk to many other doctors. I'm always in the conversation of learning more because, you know, the terms change, some of the diagnosis change, things change and evolve now that it's kind of out there and it's more exposure. But, you know, also I forgot to say one thing. I think the most important thing for the plates to go federal and to go nationwide is, I mean, who wants to be that police officer or, you know, a police officer or a firefighter that within seconds made the wrong decision because he didn't know or she didn't know? Who wants to carry that, dedicate their life to service and to be a protector of their community and not understand what they're walking into and might shoot or might within the wrong call? But if that plate can just alleviate that, you know, and can give that officer that information so that they don't have to carry that for the rest of their life or their career, that they killed someone that was autistic just because they didn't know. I want to make sure that that's a part of the past.
And obviously, when you talk about those diagnoses, what diagnosis changed the most because of COVID?
I would say a lot of kids have the sensory processing disorder. I mean, that is really new. When Rio in 2010, it was just strictly kind of autism or you had Down syndrome. It was like this or that. There was a little bit of like, apraxia, which is a kind of a different way where your tongue, you know, hard speech kind of delay. And then there was also, you would see sometimes a lot of kids, you know, starting with the nonverbal. But now I see that these kids have so much ADHD, so much sensory, whether they don't like textures of food. I have so many families tell me, oh no, my daughter, my son can't eat those kind of foods because it's all about texture, or not being able to communicate. There's a lot. It keeps evolving, but people say, okay, now it's more prevalent because there's more diagnosis. That's why it was always there. But I don't remember when my son was in preschool, so many kids being like him. I was alone. And I see now when I go into a classroom, I've worked in the preschools, you can just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or at least on the spectrum. You can call them immediately, you'll see it. And hopefully with all this education and awareness, and also this voice, you know, for me to be unapologetic and to get out there and tell the truth and tell my story, I hope I encourage other parents that are denying their children a diagnosis, that are not wanting to accept it or to make those steps forward to go to their pediatrician. There are parents that are still very much not wanting to wrap their head around this and that are in denial that their child, because it's hard. It's heartbreaking, especially with the fathers. I find that the fathers, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so don't get mad at me, but I find that the fathers really have a hard time with this. Most of the moms are single moms with the autistic child, sometimes one or two of them. You know, that this is just a fact. And the men have a hard time, but I feel like it's also, you know, you have this image that you're going to have this beautiful life. You waited your whole life to be a mom and a dad, and you have your baby. And if it physically looks normal, per se, it's hard to understand that the development isn't the same, and that's a crushing blow. And, you know, these diagnoses are coming in very early. It's like at 2.5 when Rio was diagnosed. I had to let go of so many things. Like, he's never going to have this. He's never going to be on a baseball team. He's not going to have friends. You know, he's not going to be bar mitzvahed. He may never talk to me. He may never say, I love you. I won't know if he's hurt. These are the things that go through your brain. And it's heartbreaking. It's very hard to get up every day. And then the children struggle. They have a lot of sometimes illness, sometimes double diagnosis, sometimes there's other factors going on. So it's not an easy road ahead, but it can be better.
How many of these kids actually have double diagnoses right now?
I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I know it's high. A lot of the time, from what I've been told through the IEP process, is that you can only really identify one diagnosis. Whether if they have Down syndrome, they'll put them under Down. It can't be like Down and autism, but a lot of kids sometimes will have Down syndrome and autism. So they'll usually pick just one on the IEP for the individual education plan that you get through school and the government, so that you can get services and help.
Sure. Yeah, I remember that.
But I know that a lot of kids will have, they'll have ADHD and be OCD and have a lot of these, for the meds that they prescribe.
Wow.
This is a very new conversation. And it's going to take a lot of deeper understanding through the medical community, through, our townships, through government, a lot for law enforcement, teachers in school. A lot of these kids are homeschooled because the schools are not equipped. They don't know what to do with them. They keep calling the parents to come pick them up, and then the parents get fired, and so that they have to homeschool. A lot of bullying, really bad bullying. Really bad. And a lot of these kids, unfortunately, the statistics are 6 times more likely to commit suicide due to loneliness and isolation. So there's a lot of work to be doing. We do have another training called Just Be My Friend, and it's to teach younger kids how to be friends with kids that are typical and on the spectrum, so that they can have buddies and can grow together, because children are pure. So if there's any discrimination, it's not coming from the child. It's something that they've learned outside or at home. And that's why we want to really educate our younger generation. They are pure. They have beautiful hearts. They don't see discrimination. And autism doesn't care about your skin color, your religion, your sexual orientation, your bank finances. It takes us all. So there is, autism does not discriminate. So we want to make sure that the next generation of kids that are going to grow up together are kind, that are, have beautiful hearts, and that will protect people like my son, that won't be mean to him, that are going to want to be his friend.
And, I hope to get you back on in the fall so we can talk more in depth about the law enforcement training. I wish I had more time, but I just have less than a minute.
Oh,
but Layla Luna,
appreciate you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And
so much is happening, and I'm really grateful to have this interview. And I can't wait to tell you the next chapter. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We've only just begun.
Well, there you go. And thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close-Ups. And as I said, I'll have you back on in the fall.